We're going to get started again with the next speakers.
Great. All right, everyone. So we're going to convene our speakers again, so please go.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sherry Sauer. I'm a North County resident, but I also have a legal services firm that services different industries, including the cannabis industry. But tonight what I want to talk about is a personal story. I have a friend with fourth stage liver cancer that has metastasized. 6 months ago, she started using CBD and has decreased her morphine use by almost 30% because she's using CBD instead to stave off the nausea and to stave off especially the pain. When I asked her first where she got her CBD from, she told me about her back alley entrance into a store and bumping down a dark hallway until she got to a grated window where they pushed a bottle of liquid to her that she was told was CBD. As soon as I found that out, I took her to a licensed dispensary so she could get something from a reputable firm that was in a safe environment. And that's really the only message I want to say here, is that it is about safety for people who need medical cannabis for their treatments. And I know that you've limited your dispensaries to 2. I'm not going to discuss whether that's fair. You know your city. But at least have legal dispensaries, because people need to be able to access legal CBD to treat their severe medical conditions. Thank you so much.
Good evening, I'm Kelly McCormick, and this is largely to me about unintended consequences. Medical marijuana is already legal, and there is a delivery service in Oceanside which currently exists, and we'll be happy to bring pot to people that would like to buy it. The police chief and fire chief oppose commercial pot for many reasons, including increased crime, increased rates of drugged driving, and overdoses on high THC edibles, also increased costs for law enforcement, which will not be made up by taxes or fees. Public health experts oppose it. And by the way, pot smoke is listed as a known carcinogen by the state of California, so it can kill people slowly. It's the #1 drug of choice for teens in diversion programs. The Vista Unified School District has already sent letters to parents warning that they've seen an increase in marijuana use in recent months. As you know, the district includes many students who live in Oceanside, so why would you want to add to that glut? On the issue of signage, in fact, one of the Planning Commission members right up there laughed and said, well, all the teens will know where it is anyway, so why limit signage? Now, I think that tells you a lot. In the city of San Diego, there are several ongoing lawsuits brought by neighbors of pot shops and manufacturing facilities. Smell is a major issue. One neighbor gets complaints from clients who visit his business. Another man gets headaches from the fumes. In a separate lawsuit, a commercial association, which is similar to an HOA, is worried about a substantial increase in their insurance rates and also the possibility of losing their mortgage. They have also brought a lawsuit. So you will not be doing any favors for your constituents by allowing these facilities to open up nearby. They will have neighbors even if they're in industrial areas. It would be wiser to wait until state regulations catch up on issues such as track and trace, it being cash only, and contamination with pesticides. Thank you.
Our next 4 speakers are Jimmy Figueroa, Virginia Falses, and Carolyn Bolton, and Damian Johnson.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jimmy Figueroa. I'm a born and raised Oceanside resident. I'm also a commissioner on the North County Gang Commission. I wasn't privy to the previous speakers before me, so I'm just going to speak on initially what I came here to say. In the past couple weeks, I've seen recommendations by the different commissions, and I would highly encourage the City Council to practice extreme sensitivity and compassion when we think about some of these dispensaries and where they can possibly be planted. I heard something somewhere on the lines of 8 or 9. And that brings fear to me because the communities that I work with, some of the high crime areas, marginalized communities in Oceanside along the Mid-Valley, Deep Valley, Tri-City area, the communities east of the 5, I'm fearful that one of these dispensaries can possibly place in one of those communities. And for me, in the work that I do, also as a certified public defender, as an intern, I deal with a lot of clients that are currently that live in these communities that are still being penalized for some of these charges, and to put a dispensary in those communities would be extremely insensitive to some of the residents. I just think as we work towards public safety and as we work to helping our residents that live in these neighborhoods, I would just ask the City Council to please implore sensitivity when we think about some of our communities that we're all working to assist. And also moving forward, I think that it's very important and imperative, if this is something that the city is going to do, that it generates a revenue stream so we can pour back into public safety, specifically with our youth development programs. Thank you.
We have Carolyn Bolton, Damian Johnson. Great.
Good evening. My name is Damian Johnson. I run a skilled nursing facility with 70 residents and about 100 employees in my care. Work and live here in North County, and I'm married and a father of 5 children. I was unable to attend the Planning Commission meeting on March 12th due to work. However, I was very impressed with the staff report on the thoughtfulness of the members of our Police and Fire Commission as they expressed their significant and evidence-based concerns. At the Economic Development meeting, I had the opportunity to describe our family's foster child and the heartache of the family from which he came due to his mother's marijuana use. I conveyed the extraordinary cost in state and county resources and staff time spent on her and her children, as well as the financial burden to us all to care for children and their parents when their marijuana use incapacitates them. And I hope I conveyed the enormous human loss that occurs in these circumstances that can have rippling effects for generations. And there seems to be some misconception that the revenue that comes from marijuana businesses will be a counterbalance to this horrific costs to human potential and city resources, but that is not possible. Every decision the city makes has financial and social impacts, and I don't think the city has undertaken a thorough impact study, and I as I would have expected, and I think the City Council needs to wait on any decision until they have a more thorough understanding of the financial, the staff time and resources, the cost to surrounding businesses that come from this, and especially the cost to the police and fire departments detailed in their statements. Thank you.
Carolyn Bolton? She left? Okay, thank you. We're going to move to our next 4 speakers. Rick Kalu, Kathleen Lippett, Peggy Walker, and Amanda Mesha.
Come on down.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kathleen Lippett. I'm a public health practitioner, and I believe if everyone in this room with an economic conflict of interest were to leave, the room would pretty much empty out very quickly. The concept of marijuana as a medicine has been based on anecdotal and testimonial hearsay, but that's not the scientific standard of a 21st century medicine. We hear ad nauseum that no one ever dies from marijuana overdose. But that's an ignorant and nonsensical statement. There are numerous ways that you can die from a marijuana-related incident. A wrong-way driver hits you or your family in a fatal head-on crash, suicide resulting from a psychotic break after consuming a high THC product. No one dies from tobacco overdose either, yet over 500,000 per year die from tobacco-related illness. Marijuana doesn't result in overdose like opioids do because it doesn't affect the breathing center of the brain. That doesn't mean it isn't harmful. Providing marijuana for the seriously ill does not necessitate inviting commercial marijuana industry into their city. Tobacco kills 480,000 a year and alcohol 80,000, far more than the deaths from all illegal drugs. But do we really want to see how many deaths will marijuana contribute to as we see its prevalence of use increase? 2/3 of new marijuana users annually are under 18, and 1/6 of them will go on to become addicted. Commercial marijuana operators aren't interested in providing marijuana for the seriously ill, but to profit from the sale of high THC marijuana products. So far, there has been no interest in the scientific evidence, so it might surprise you to learn that a systematic review of all available data regarding the use of cannabidiol for a range of psychiatric conditions, including schizophrenia, PTSD, anxiety, or substance use disorder, found no reliable evidence to back their claims. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Weiss, Deputy Mayor Lowry, City Attorney Mullen, and City Manager Lawrence, and council members. My name is Rick Kalu. In 1964, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. That's the kind where you have to inject insulin once a day at the time. And 3 years later, my primary care physician recommended that I try marijuana as a method to smooth out the highs and lows in my blood sugar that I was dealing with. I'm 70 years old now. I've had diabetes for over 50 years, and marijuana has helped me. It gave me an appetite when I didn't have an appetite. It helps me sleep, and it helps my control of my diabetes. Now I take 4 shots a day, and I have a continuous glucose monitor that's made in the county. My blood sugar tends to go like this. It'll go up after I eat, and then it'll smooth down. And diabetes or cannabis use helps me deal with it. I tend to use cannabis in a ratio of 80% cannabidiol and 20% THC. That's the psychoactive part, and it has helped me a lot to manage my control of my chronic disease. Please support marijuana for medicinal use. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Peggy Walker. I have worked for many, many years in youth drug use prevention education, and I work with SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, a national organization that promotes science-based policy for marijuana. As someone who's worked with youth, I have great concerns over the widespread commercialization of marijuana, and I respectfully suggest that before you take action on these regulations, that you see if the state is going to implement more safety procedures and regulatory staff to protect cities' rights. Right now, the BCC, Bureau of Cannabis Control, only has 3 employees. Right now, there are bills afloat to roll back pot taxes that would reduce pot taxes from 15 to 11%. That's AB 3157, and another bill, SB 1302, to roll away local control over deliveries. These bills essentially renege on the promises of Prop 64, tax money and local control. What will the impact be here in Oceanside? Commercial associations in common interest commercial areas, those are like homeowners associations, are now pushing for legal rights to approve or deny applications for marijuana use as legal owners, and they should have that right. But this could have far-reaching impact for industrial areas. What impact will it have here? I urge you to conduct an impact study to understand the cost of the city's regulations and the implications and impact it will have on the city. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Amanda Mesha. I'm a resident of Oceanside on Amigos Court, 92056. I'm here in support of the ordinance and to commend the work of the ad hoc committee. I would like to remind everyone that elections do have consequences. That in 2016, 56.9% of Oceanside voters approved for adult use. We've already had these tough discussions around marijuana because the voters were informed. Therefore, we must understand how to implement the public's will. This is a representative democracy. So I'm in support of this very first step. I believe we need to bring the black market back into the light, and we need to know who is operating these businesses. I fully support the supply chain from cultivation to dispensaries, and I want to honor the actual heritage of Oceanside as both a military town and a farming town. And we've heard from multiple speakers tonight, from our Farm Bureau and farmers, and from lots of veterans who say that they desperately need medical marijuana for their PTSD. We always ask how we can support our veterans. I think this is one way. So therefore, I fully support the ad hoc committee, and I would ask that quickly we understand where our taxes will go, and I would like to personally advocate that any tax measures go towards affordable housing for our veterans. Thank you.
Our next 4 speakers are Scott Priest, Benjamin Dennis, Judy Strange, and Lauren Falstich.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Just wanted to take a quick minute. I'm here on behalf of my wife, who's a school teacher, our 3 kids who all attend schools here in Oceanside. I'm glad that tonight's meeting is a little bit more civil than the meeting I attended back in January. It's probably the worst decorum I've ever witnessed in all the city council meetings I've attended as a scoutmaster, as a citizen, and as an advocate for the youth. I'm a soccer coach, scoutmaster. I work with a lot of youth. I'm here tonight as a City of Oceanside resident. A lot of people have mentioned tonight, we're not arguing about the medical benefits of marijuana. I think we beat that horse pretty dead tonight. There are medical benefits to marijuana. I'd ask the people here, who's ever ordered something on Amazon? And the question is, or the answer is probably everybody in this room. We have medical delivery already for marijuana. Right? If you can get things on Amazon, you can get your marijuana delivered to you legally in the state of California. Now, with regards to pot production, cultivation, we did not vote for that. Okay? There's already an excess of pot in the system in the state of California. If we allow for growing in the state, or mass cultivation in the city of Oceanside, where is it going to go? It's going to go to the black market. It's going to go outside the city. You can grow up to 6 plants, and you can exchange with people already legally in the state of California. Right. How much do we need? Okay. I understand people have issues medically, and they need it. They can get it, and they can get it legally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Council members for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Benjamin Dennis, and I'm a 9th grader at Mission Vista, and I live here in Oceanside. I'm part of the Mission Vista Steel Drum Group and also part of their golf team. I have a younger brother and sister. When I watch the news, it seems the good news about Oceanside, great schools, sports teams, beaches, are overlooked, and instead I hear about gangs and shootings. I hope when the news comes on tonight, it says that Oceanside decided that our city does not need pot shops or pot manufacturing facilities or pot growers, that our city is aiming higher. Teenagers like me, like myself, want to be proud of their city. I think we are lucky to have our own police department and fire department. From staff report, it seems like the police department and fire department have some very significant concerns about the problems they know from talking to their counterparts in other cities all in North County. I think this is disrespectful to disregard their comments. I heard on the news that California is described as a source state for marijuana across the United States. I guess this means that California pot farms are the source of pot being sent outside the state and perhaps outside the country. So I'm confused. What could possibly be gained by Oceanside being part of this extra pot production that may end up in cities outside California that don't want it? Thank you for your time.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Lauren Falstich and I teach 5th grade here in the area. And one thing I know for sure is that young children look to adults to learn what's valuable, healthy, important, intelligent, and a wise choice. And any adult making decisions that affect children carries the responsibility to be slow and deliberate in your fact-checking and your information gathering, making sure that the right people are at the right table. I feel that didn't happen at the Planning Commission meeting on March 12th. The fact that the table was full of people who were making money, growing, manufacturing, selling, and delivering pot does not make it an impartial or unbiased conversation. On March 12th, did you hear from educators, pediatricians, coaches, youth serving organizations, youth faith leaders? They were probably working to protect the youth, as I was that night, and I am daily. However, it should have been your responsibility to hear from everyone who has the youth interest in their hearts and not to rush judgment. Did you do all you could to make that happen? This has everything to do with the youth. Since we already know that California grows 5 to 12 times the amount of pot consumed in California, where does the excess go? Will it be diverted to the youth? Of course it will. That's where it always goes. To say that Prop 64 was a mandate to have commercial pot businesses in Oceanside is all the Prop 64 advertising aggressively told citizens that the cities would make their own decisions, and 70% of the cities did decide to ban that. You guys, it's no secret that Oceanside has really revamped its image, and if you allow this to happen, all that hard work would just go down the drain. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Judy Strang. I'm here for PTA and parent groups, and we were not part of the ad hoc committee, and we would have been interested and invested in the outcome and the work of that committee. I was, however, involved in the last 2 years' discussion when you made the decision to include delivery, and you did that because you recognized that patients and caregivers could by law and have been able since 1996 to secure and exchange pot. And you wanted to, by adopting marijuana delivery, to allow another source that you could regulate to make this available to caregivers and to patients. And when you made that decision, you took 2 years to make that decision, and it was well considered. We have one of your only registered deliverers here with us this evening, and I think she'd be the first to say that it is a professional organization and that the products they deliver are safe. I wonder about the 60 that apparently are here in the city who have not gone through the registration process. What does that say about people who want to do pot business in the city of Oceanside? I would suggest to you that delivery, the decision you already made, is the decision to stick with. As far as the black market is concerned, we know that wherever there is regulations, the black market flourishes, not the reverse. And you should know about the city of San Diego. They are not realizing tax profits. In fact, what they've decided is they lack the forensic bookkeeping skills to collect the taxes from the businesses already operating in their city, because surprise, they're not good about letting the city know. And in closing, I would like to also recommend that you have an impact study, that you not go further until you have a good impact study that really lets you know what the economic situation would be. Thank you.
Our next 4 speakers are Sam Humiad, Drew Andrioff, Dallin Young, and Kevin at SD Strains.
Kevin, you got your business name? What's that all about?
Sorry, I didn't have a last name there.
We're an organization. No, that's cheap. That's just cheap, brother. Well, thank you. Hey, the longer you spend making decisions on and procrastinating, the more you're feeding the black market. I agree. The commission has a tough job listening to both proponents and opponents, so I commend you on getting this far. I think complaints come in every category, whether you're opening a bar or a dance club, and that affects the image of your city too. So you guys have a lot of decisions to make, and I think most of you have already decided that we're going there. This is happening. I see people ready to make a decision. Maybe not everyone, but it looks like that decision will be yes, and cannabis will be in Oceanside. I thank you for that, getting us this far, but I want to bring up three major marks that I think we're missing. One is this medical. I mean, I just can't imagine how Oceanside's going to act like a dry state or a dry city. And if you're going to have a task force that regulates this rule of medical, you're making almost an impossible job for maybe the police or the task force. They're going to have to make sure every bud that comes off every plant, every candy that's made in Oceanside, only whether it's distributed in Del Mar or Santa Ana, goes only for medical use. That's going to be very tough and probably won't even be a valid job in 2 years. California has voted for adult use. Medical can't really be proven, so they've chosen adult use. Like a banana, it can alleviate cramps, or cranberry juice can be medical too, I'm sure. So that medical thing, I hope you'll not just dwell on making a job that's near impossible. It's going to be hard to trace down medical. Zoning should be, if you look on the internet, if you look anywhere, some of the highest grade cannabis is grown indoors. I commend you for giving to the farmers, but there's other ideas also. And taxes waiting until 2020, unnecessary. It would be easy to collect right away. Thank you.
Sam Humia, Drew Andrioff, and Dallin Young.
Greetings, City Council, Mayor Weiss, everybody involved here. So I'm the new president of the San Diego Cannabis Delivery Alliance, and I am here to fight for the allowance of independent cannabis delivery services in this new ordinance. When this ordinance was written, unfortunately, Type 9 and Type 12 licenses had not been issued or created by the Bureau of Cannabis Control. As such, the ad hoc committee decided not to include them for a multitude of reasons that at the time seemed reasonable. But as we've heard from proponents and opponents of the marijuana industry, everybody's here is okay with medical marijuana. They want to keep it away from the children, but they want to make sure the people who voted for medical marijuana, the actual patients, receive their medication, and they receive it effectively from professionals like me, like Michelle, where are you? There she is. Like her, like Robin. I can't remember where she is. There she is. Hi, thank you. Her. We are cannabis therapy professionals. We're not pot slingers. We're not drug dealers. We need Type 12 licenses. We need Type 9 licenses. Type 9 licenses are actually more of the same. Type 9 is just another big box retailer that delivers marijuana in 30 minutes or less, guaranteed, or your money back. And that's great. People want that. People who are accustomed to buying marijuana need this. Nobody wants to stand in line for an hour and a half just to go talk to some 19-year-old boppy girl going, oh my God, smoke this, it's fantastic. They need a professional that says, hey, you know what? You're suffering from XYZ. You need this much THC, this much CBD, this much whatever. For this reason, and this reason alone, I ask that you, before you vote yes, you include Type 12 licenses so that real professionals can continue engaging in the business and we can fully eliminate the black market. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Mayor Weiss. I just want to thank you all for your work. We've come a long way, and we're almost at the finish line here. There's two things that are going to happen after tonight. One, marijuana is still going to be legal in California. We've already passed that threshold. It's going to happen. Marijuana is still going to be grown, sold, and consumed in Oceanside. We had a lot of kids show up here tonight, and I commend them on their efforts to come out and be part of the active political arena here in Oceanside. But the fact of the matter is we all want the same thing. I haven't heard anybody come out tonight and say we want kids to use marijuana. We have age regulations for that. I went to Rancho. I was a Rancho alumni. Kids got pot back then. I'm sure everyone here knew somebody or somebody in high school. And this is going to happen until the end of it. I mean, we've had black markets, and we'll continue to have black markets. The only way we can combat that is with regulation. It's so much easier for kids to get pot right now than it is for them to get alcohol or cigarettes, because we license and regulate tobacco and alcohol. And if you can go and buy it from anybody and they're not going to ID you, of course it's going to be easier for kids to get it. So I talked with Craig Balbin, I've spoken with Councilmember Sanchez, and they've also assured me that they were able to get pot when they were in high school and that they know kids around. And it's no. So let's move forward. Let's not just do medical marijuana here, but let's do adult use regulations. We have 237 alcohol licenses in Oceanside. There's no reason we can't have recreational marijuana here as well. We can use it safely, we can sell it safely, we can regulate it safely. You can put a pot shop across the street from a school and those kids aren't going to be able to buy it because it costs a lot of money, licensing and regulation to put this and forth, and they're not going to risk that for a child's sale. Thank you very much.
Hello, council members. My name is Dallin Young, and I'm the executive director of the Association of Cannabis Professionals. We represent licensed storefronts throughout San Diego County, as well as licensed manufacturers, cultivators, patients, and other individuals who all have an interest in making sure that our county develops a thriving licensed supply chain. I'm also here as a 5-year high school wrestling coach and as a staunch advocate for the disability community. I'd first like to thank council and staff for their efforts in researching and proposing regulations on this topic. What you have before you is an opportunity to bring a new industry to Oceanside that can revitalize key portions of the city while providing jobs, economic benefits, and access to alternative medicine for your residents. As an association working towards establishing common sense regulations for the industry, we urge council to adopt the ad hoc committee's findings with amendments. Though we appreciate all the work city staff has put into this process, many of their recommendations are overly restrictive and would greatly handicap any new and emerging industry, let alone ours, which is still in its infancy. Our first concern is the number of retail locations in Oceanside. The Planning Commission has recommended up to 8, the Ad Hoc Committee 4, and staff 2. Oceanside has roughly a population of 176,000 residents. If the city votes today on 4 locations, they would have the highest population versus retail ratio in the county, meaning there would be only 1 retail location for roughly 44,000 people. If council decides on 8, this would put them on the same track as the city of Chula Vista, which has 1 retailer for every 22,000 residents, which is a much more reasonable number. Allowing for anything less than 4 is unacceptable and in no way meet the demand for patients of Oceanside and, as of now, North County. Staff recommends that council approves only 2 for the first 12 months to monitor how they operate, then approve 2 more. In the county, we've already seen how they operate. There are 14 retail locations in operation in the city of San Diego right now, and 4 in the unincorporated areas. And what we have seen in the city of San Diego is tax revenue at $358,348 given to the city by these retailers in just the month of January. I'm running out of time here, so I'll say thank you very much, council, and please adopt ad hoc committee's findings. Thank you.
Our next 4 speakers are Teresa Baker, Sydney Simmons, Rick Payne, and John Kramer.
Hello, thank you. My name is Teresa Baker. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I am a mother and a wife. I have 4 children. I was raised in a home of a father who was addicted to marijuana. I saw the effects. I saw what it did to our household. I saw the damage it did. And my dad ended up dying at 40 years old. And maybe it wasn't because of just marijuana use, but he did use that every single day. He grew it in the house. I remember as a child, people coming over to my house and I'd have to make up lies. What is your dad, oh, my dad rolls his own cigarettes. Okay, this is, you've heard the youth, and this is what I want to just, to hear that the youth are looking up to us as adults, as leaders, and they see it. If the kids see this harm that's going to happen, I pray that you would also see it too. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cindy Simmons. I live in the Southmore Hills area of Oceanside. Been here over 20 years. My husband is a Vietnam combat vet. My father was a Korean War vet, and my grandfather was actually in World War II. My mother lives with us. She has been disabled for over 26 years with rheumatoid arthritis as well as other ailments. My husband has, from being in Vietnam, he has diabetic, he's had heart conditions. I almost lost him because of a brain aneurysm. And he also has neuropathy. We started attending last year on this cannabis issue because we have 4.5 acres and we would like to make money. I don't want to really grow it, but I wouldn't mind giving my property to somebody who could. Because of that, my husband started using the cream, which has helped him tremendously. My mother, who doesn't use anything, has been on these medications for over 26 years, and it's literally debilitated her body and eaten it away. So I would urge you, since this was approved over 20 years ago for medical, it was approved a couple years ago for the recreational, don't even want to go there. Don't want to see kids use this, but this needs to be approved for the medicinal reasons, and it does work. You are all elected. The voters of Oceanside approved this by saying that you're going against people by being disrespectful. You're being disrespectful to your constituents if you don't approve it. And as you know, we don't want to see the black market go away, but it won't go away unless you do something and regulate it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Kramer. To the council members, to the mayor, to the chief of police, appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I help family businesses and family farmers in several different states, several of them who are interested in the cannabis space. They are spending quite a bit of time to study it, to make sure that they're going to do things the right way. And I'd encourage you, as you go through this process, to realize there are a number of reliable, professional people that are going to do things the right way in this space. They're going to observe the regulations that are imposed on them. They're not going to sell cannabis to kids. They're going to operate in a professional manner, pay their taxes, and do things the right way. As I watch the family farms, I come from a family farming organization, and our family has not been able to continue farming. I see what's possible, what you've made possible here in the city of Oceanside for farming families, and the opportunity that the cannabis could bring to these farming families. And I think you have an opportunity to have a group of passionate, educated, and experienced farmers really make an impact in the marketplace and do things in the right way. So appreciate your interest in this concept. I've been watching this in Oregon and Colorado, and I think the work that the ad hoc committee did here was exemplary, and your interest in hearing from all parties, just as you've done tonight. And one of the things to consider in the markets that I've seen is it's not just the residents, but people come to Oceanside to watch the sunset. They come to have dinner. They come to stay and shop and go to restaurants. So consider the amount of visitors you have in addition to the residents when you determine the amount of dispensaries. Thank you.
Hello, Council, Mayor, City Attorney, Deputy Mayor. Wanted to thank you guys for taking the time. Obviously, this has been a challenging task for all of you, and there's a lot of valid opinions on both sides. My name is Rick Payne. I am a commercial real estate and land use consultant, and I've worked with commercial cannabis operators throughout various municipalities all over the state of California, from Humboldt County down to the city of San Diego and everywhere in between. As it stands right now, I think this is a much different environment than we'll have in probably 10 years, and we'll probably look back on this with a completely different light. Having said that, we're not there yet, and we're here. But today, you guys have precedent. The majority of the city of Oceanside did support Proposition 64. The majority of the state of California did support Proposition 64. As Dallin from the Association of Cannabis Professionals mentioned, the city of San Diego generated roughly $354,000 in taxes just in the month of January. Having said that, medical may not generate as much revenue as adult use does, But the reality is that the real estate values tied to those properties, it's undeniable. I mean, we've looked at facts from Colorado, and in general, land value does go up, which in turn generates property taxes for the city. The agricultural industry here in Oceanside is fundamental to your economy. That's undeniable. And the Farm Bureau is in support of this. The agricultural community and the farmers are in full support of this. And I think an industry that wants regulation and wants to be compliant has stepped forward and asked the council to vote to do that exactly. So thank you for your time.
Our next speakers are Cindy Rocco, Greg Marte, and Amber Newman.
Wow. About time. Amber, come on, you're first. Oh. Whew. What a long, strange trip this has been, huh? Greg Marty, 404 via Emily, 4292 via Clemente, and thank you, Chuck, for not kicking me out. I'm sorry I haven't been here for the last 3. I missed the police department. I'm sorry I was on the road. I was in Miami giving a speech at D'Oreal about CBDs in front of 20,000 professionals. Been in Seattle. Just a little thing about me. Show of the room. How many have been in this business since the 80s? Okay, very few. How about the 90s? 2000 to present. See the difference? We all live here. I own a distribution company. I just got invited into Sherwood Forest. Do any of you guys on the council know what Sherwood Forest is? Anybody in the room know what Sherwood Forest is? It's a 1.5 million square foot indoor growing facility inside in the Desert Hot Springs area. In it is Spliffin, Russian Assassins, Jungle Boys and Russian Assassins. Medical-wise, they're selling about 500 to 600 pounds a week. And they've got it right out there. So I would hearken you all to call Desert Hot Springs to see how that's going on out there. Things are perfect. I've been running up and down this state, getting all my contracts ready so that when we do, if I do get my license, all the money that I generate from my company comes to my beloved city that I go to Miami and Seattle for. And when I get to come down from LA and I get to see that beautiful pier, and I know that my head is gonna hit my pillow in Oceanside. Now, for all those kids that came right on, good job. You ever met a 3-time cancer survivor? Guess what, I'm one. Every day I ingest over 100 milligrams of 50-to-1 CBD oil. That's not from the industrial hemp plant, that's from the cannabis plant. Because see, I got this gnarly ass scar right here. And I deal with gnarly pain every day. And it's about medical. It's not about recreational. I grew recreational in Humboldt County in 1985. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chuck, for not throwing me out.
Honorable Mayor, Council, Cindy Rocco, South Oceanside. I think that tonight that the core issue is not whether we allow medical marijuana in Oceanside, but how we roll out our local ordinances. And I implore each of you to kindly postpone a final decision today to ensure not just safe access for patients, but for the safety of all residents and staff. So I say yes to medical marijuana, but only to a better ordinance. Like we've heard from our farmers, they would like to have expansions on what they could do. So I think we should need to be open to modifying what we have in front of us today. So no, just for today. I think we need to respect our police and fire chief recommendations and ensure that we are truly safe and ensure public welfare, and give them the opportunity to establish a strategy that will include rules, regulations, procedures, and safety standards for our city employees and for city residents. I also believe that we should establish a tiered rollout of the project with an associated timeline and conduct an annual audit of all marijuana-related businesses to test and monitor such things as compliance, cost, safety, etc. This includes limiting and phasing up the number of each of the related marijuana businesses to control concentrations in neighborhood impacts until we know after an audit whether we can expand those numbers. In addition, I'll skip that, hang on. I also think that it's a shame that right now we don't have any financial analysis of this project. And at this point, it's irresponsible to roll this out because we don't even know what the burden and the costs are going to be, and it's going to end up being in the pocketbooks of every Oceanside resident. And I implore us to, just to add on, is to roll out that sales tax this fall, because and also because we're trying to do a half-cent sales tax under the guise of safety, but having the sales tax on this should be attributed towards safety, and also we should have a child education and drug prevention program as a part of this implementation. Thank you.
Amber Newman, here we are again. It is just shy of 1 year since the Prop 64 workshop. And this last year has definitely seemed to bring out the best and worst on both sides. We've heard proponents pitching their companies first and patients second. We've had opponents speaking as if they are the only ones in the world who want to protect our city's youth, because apparently cannabis patients don't have or care about children. We've been educated. As proponents, we have been called drug dealers and pot profiteers by people who've never even met us. And let's be real, the word pot, with very rare exception, is really only used to diminish, demean, and belittle, which is a pretty nasty way to speak of people you don't know. What I think puzzles me most is that I honestly don't understand what everyone is still afraid of. Do we need to implement safely and smartly? Yes. Are we going to make mistakes? Of course we are. But in the end, we are still talking about a plant, a virtually non-toxic plant at that. To put that into some perspective, we've got nuclear waste that is being buried on the beach not far from here. We have a Hep A crisis due to rampant homeless and insufficient sanitation options. We have so many bars that our own tourist bureau touts Oceanside as being at the western end of Hops Highway. But cannabis, a plant that is not only being shown to have more and more medical possibilities every single day, but is also yet to directly kill anyone, is being treated like plutonium, being forced to hide in the darkest corners of the city because, God forbid, a child might actually see something that is inappropriate for them. It is time to put an end to reefer madness. The voters have spoken. Patients have begged for help in droves. There is no reason they should continue to be subjected to street corner dealers and illegal deliveries. Let's get this done and restore their dignity. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. This is a public hearing item. Any members of the public who have not submitted their forms yet and wish to speak, they have the opportunity to do so at this time.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. I have listened and I've kept count, and over 2-to-1 support the ordinance. I also want to take him to a couple critiques. Number one, as you know, I'm a senior advocate. If it wasn't for medical marijuana, I know too many seniors would not be with us today, because it helps with the relief of pain associated with cancer and other medical issues. They need it, they need the choice, they need accessibility. Two, I support what the agricultural people that came forward to you say. You know what it is? Listen to their critique. To our police chief, you have good concerns. However, you're being duplicitous. You have not talked about alcohol and its cost to our community, which is probably 100-fold more than your concerns about marijuana. I don't see you wanting to reject every bar, every hop place that would come in for the breweries. In fact, you support many of them. I also want to encourage the council here to take and very simply have a trial period for implementation of the ordinance and return to you within, say, a 24-month period, and have an oversight committee that would take and make sure it carries out the wishes and brings back if there is any problem with its enforcement or problem in the community, and make sure that you can take and nip it in the bud and cease it at that point. That would be fair.
This is a public hearing item. Any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Great.
I'm not going to let him.
evening, Council and Mayor, members of the audience. Vic Bagay. A few items I wanted to bring up was, one, the issue on this exports markets, number of outlets. It's true, we get shoppers from everywhere. We've got the 5, we've got the trains, we've got our communities living all the way down to the Baja Coast. I work retail in Carlsbad, and we've had our communities coming back to shop in Oceanside and Carlsbad. That's besides everyone traveling down here on the train, tourists and such. Agriculture, I'm a little surprised about agriculture in Southern Cal. We've got 80,000 local farmers in San Diego. And I do know that Canada actually sends their trucks to Mexico for tomatoes. So I'm sure the growers here will expect a good business. As far as health goes, I did want to make a comment here. I did promote and consult an Ayurvedic product, and it's 8 medicinal plants, just like marijuana, drunk as a tea, and reduces blood sugar better than insulin. So I'm not an expert on marijuana and medical part. I'm here actually for the steel. I want to sell steel. I don't want to sell you a Trump Tower, but we can go 3 stories with light gauge steel. And you've got a 22,000 square foot proposal for growers. Let me tie in the exports with that. If growers can go higher than a 1-story building at a very low cost of light gauge steel, you never know where they'll be getting their markets. I know I have friends in Singapore and in Japan, and they buy this TBD oil. They buy it from sellers in California. Thank you very much.
What was your name, sir?
Vic Bagay.
Thank you.
V-I-K-R-U-M, Vikram Bagay, B-A-G-A-I.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is George Simmons. I'm a farmer out in South Morrill Hills. My wife was up here earlier, told you that I'm a disabled vet. The reason I want to speak is simple. This is still America the way I see it. The things that we enjoy in this country were given to us by the blood of a lot of people that died. Here we are as farmers. We've got a legal crop, cannabis. I get sick and tired of hearing it called pot and marijuana. It's a cannabis plant. I can tell you that my farm would be considerably more profitable if I raise cannabis than if I raise canary palms, which is what I raise now. So if the state has said, the voting constituency of Oceanside has said they're for it, what right does our city council have to use their own opinions as the marker for deciding how we go? All I want to do is grow a legal crop that is profitable. Is there any farmers that don't want to do that? So I encourage you to vote the way the people have encouraged you to vote. Thank you very much.
How you doing? Jonathan Cooper, retired Marine gunner, sergeant artilleryman. I've been in Oceanside since 2000. I've seen a lot of vets go through here, and I love the city of Oceanside. I want to say thank you all for letting me speak. I'm a 100% disabled vet. Got addicted to opiates. See my friends get addicted to opiates. And this is true to my heart, that too many people die and too many vets, 22 a day, commit suicide because the VA gives us crap like psychotics and things that make you crazier than you already are, when you can do something simple as take an edible or smoke a little bit of marijuana to decompress. We have people to the left, we have people to the right. I understand. Thank you to the youth I have 2 children and they're young, and thank you for stepping up and saying your part. I'm happy we can all do that. But medical marijuana has honestly saved my life, saved my marriage, and has saved so many vets that I believe we have to do what's right for the people who stay here, for our veterans, and to our cancer patients, and anybody else who needs this help. It's dear to my heart, and it saved my marriage. So thank you for your time, and please vote with your heart and do what's right. Thank you very much.
Seeing no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing and come back to the council. Deputy Mayor Lowry.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, that was an overwhelming 2 hours of statements. I really appreciate all the people who made their opinions known, and I have a statement here. On April 9th of last year, the council voted to create an ad hoc committee to explore medical marijuana regulations in the city. Today, some 352 days later, we are ready to act on the recommendations brought forward by the ad hoc committee, along with input from our city staff and city advisory boards and commissions. It's been a long journey, but tonight we can make a real difference in the city of Oceanside. In the course of these past 352 days, we heard from a number of patients whose illnesses run the gamut, who use medical marijuana for relief of their pain. They need to avoid the side effects they experience as a result of prescribed, synthesized pharmaceuticals like opioids that we just heard about from the veteran. We heard from veterans groups who advocate for medical marijuana to help our troops who've returned with injuries like PTSD and other injuries received while fighting for this country. We heard from local groups who make a living with marijuana businesses producing tinctures and ointments with CBD, the non-psychoactive agent, not THC, the psychoactive agent. We heard from people all across the spectrum who've encouraged us to move forward and shine a light on this industry and keep it honest through the enactment of our own local regulations. We've also heard from those who are in opposition. Some simply oppose it with no explanation. Others repeat the same comments at every meeting, as they've done here again tonight, presenting comparisons to other states, quoting reports which paint a dismal picture of medical marijuana use. The ad hoc committee was accused constantly throughout the entire process of not having any opposing views represented on our panels, even though we heard from those same opposing views throughout the process. Perhaps they forgot early on the fact that Councilmember Kern and I did not vote for Prop 64 in November of 2016. And perhaps they just didn't understand that we know how to say no. The purpose of the ad hoc committee was to explore possible regulations, not further prohibitions. We had bans in place when we started. We didn't need to hear from experts to tell us why we should continue to keep the bans in place. They are still in place. After numerous meetings, both in public and in committee, we developed an extensive package of recommendations which city staff has reviewed and made suggested modifications. It is important that we hear from staff about how possible policy changes which this body makes will affect the city and existing procedures. I appreciate the time which our city staff has devoted to this item and to the other countless items for which they review and offer input. We could not honestly do this job without their support and advice. We also received the advice of some of our advisory boards and commissions. The recommendations of both the ad hoc committee and city staff were brought before 3 of our commissions, those whose functions would be appropriate to review the recommendations. 2 of those committees saw benefits in moving forward with some type of regulations, 1 did not. We as a council also value the time which city residents volunteer to offer a different level of advice. I want to personally thank those people who make that ongoing commitment for their time well spent. We listen to what the committees and commissions have to say. At the end of this period, we have before us a rather large and daunting task. A task, by the way, which is incomplete and will need further review and adjustment. This is why it was so important we as a council retain the power to make decisions about important policy decisions within the city. Had the proposed cannabis initiative gone through and passed and ultimately legalized marijuana, it would have stripped the council of the ability to go back and correct errors, make enhancements, and remove any flawed pieces of regulations. A citywide election would have been required to make any changes, which is an important point to remember when signing any initiative which takes power away from the council. We have to remember what are the methods with which corrections can be made, and how much will it cost taxpayers when mistakes are discovered, and mistakes will be discovered. I want to thank the committee members who gave of their time and expertise to work on this important issue. Councilmember Kern, it was his idea. It was approved by myself and Mayor Wood. City Treasurer Dr. Trickey, Dr. Wendy Wheel, one of our patient advocates who spoke tonight, Gloria Ryan. Also, Andrea Sanders, a medical marijuana patient herself and daughter of Gwen Sanders, helped us in the beginning and continued to give support, along with Councilmember Kern's aide, Cliff Ireland, who helped us early on. And I want to note that City Attorney John Mullen gave us plenty of legal advice, which we have integrated into these proposals. I want to give a special shout out to my aide, Mr. Don Green, who's over here, who has committed his personal time and dedication and attention to detail. I have told people in groups that I've talked to in the beginning, the binder he used to come to meetings with was this big, a 1-inch binder. Currently, it is the size of the largest binder he can handle, plus 2 piles of materials on top of that. So he's bodybuilding while he's doing this job. And that's brought us to the point where we are right now. It was a great experience, an ongoing challenge, and it was really an interesting growth period for me to go through, to work with all the variety of people who I've worked with, and that made my job as chair a complete possibility. With that, I want to put forward a motion to the council for us to consider. I move the City Council accept the recommendations of the Ad Hoc Committee and introduce an ordinance amending the Oceanside Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance and Chapter 7, Article 13 of the Oceanside City Code with the following amendments and additions. 1, cultivation licenses be allowed up to 20% of lot coverage having no 1,000-foot setback requirements and be allowed to have more than 1 license on an existing legal lot so that leasing of land can be allowed to help smaller businesses find cultivation space. 2, dispensary licenses be treated as every other regulated use and not be exempt from requesting locational requirement waivers, and to only meet Article 36 separation for stated sensitive uses. 3, testing laboratory licenses continue to be non-regulated uses and be allowed in all ad hoc recommended zones. 4, nursery licenses be allowed in all ad hoc recommended zones and will continue to be a non-regulated use. 5, direct staff to return to council within 1 month with proposed regulations, zoning, and advice on adding Type 9 licenses as possible dispensary options within the city, and Type 12 licenses for existing prior to November 2016 nonprofit businesses which would need to become licensed to continue their activities. Point 6, no regulated uses will be allowed west of I-5. 7, create 1 new staff position to be funded with medical marijuana related fees. That person would be the point of contact for all marijuana related questions, application processing, and state mandated marijuana contact and reporting. That's my motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody that came out tonight and spoke. I mean, the idea that, we started this a year ago, and it came out of a meeting that we were talking about. It was too fast, and I suggested we do an ad hoc committee and we do it at length to learn about this new industry. It's been a year. We had 8 public meetings. We had a couple of field trips. We really did our work. I see Gloria out there. She really helped us a lot. And Dr. Wendy Wheel, who's a pharmacologist, she helped us. So the idea that we're not rushing into this. I know there's a lot of people out there that say that somehow we're going too fast, but we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort to try to do this right, and I think we did. And what tells me that we did is that you have two commissions, one that says no, and the other one that says you want 8 dispensaries. I think 4 is a good number. I think that tells us that we just got the right amount right now. The one thing is that this is by ordinance, so we can change this in 30 days. You can come back if we make a mistake or we miss something, that the idea that we can change it by ordinance and bring it forward again to correct whatever we need to do. The only thing that I would like to really emphasize is the supply chain. You know, we originally recommended that the supply chain, that we didn't care about A or M licenses. And that's really what we didn't hear tonight. All we heard is about the dispensaries. The dispensaries are the ones that are the very tough one that people don't want. But as far as cultivation, having the A license for cultivation, I think is important. The idea that, because it is just a plant. It's a legal crop in California. And I think having the cultivators be able to have A licenses is very important. So with that, I'm going to support the Deputy Mayor's motion that we actually move forward with this. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to send this back to staff, because there was a question brought up of how we allocate dispensaries. And the answer is we do not know. We're going to send that back down to staff so they can come up with a process to allocate dispensaries. One thing I will not support is a lottery system. I don't want anybody just hopefully get lucky and get a dispensary. I want a merit-based system. I want professionals. I'm going to let staff kind of figure that out. So about what that merit-based system is. I mean, there's other cities that have it, and I think other cities can shine a light for us to how we do this, so we don't get sued and everybody feels like they have a fair opportunity to get a dispensary license. But as far as the supply chain, you know, manufacturing, distribution, cultivation, those things are not public. You know, those things are just back office things. So I think those you won't even notice. If you go out to Milano's today and you see all that plastic out there that covers all those flower fields, you don't know what's in there. In fact, I bet 95% of the city don't even know where Milano's is at. I know where it's at, Mike. I've been there. So the idea that what they have out there, nobody's going to see. And actually, you have to go out of your way to find where they're at. So anyway, I'm going to support that. We've been at this for a year. It seems like 10 at times, but the idea that we really worked hard, and I really cannot thank, and I'm going to second one other motion of the Deputy Mayor. Don Green did all the heavy lifting on this. He is the one that had literally do the heavy lifting, because he had to bring the binders to the meetings. So the idea that I really do appreciate all the work that he has done. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming and for providing input. It has been about a year, and I voted against the creation of this ad hoc committee. I think I've already told you why. It was a very non-traditional way of creating a committee. Usually what happens is that the council directs staff to study something, to actually participate, to actually have, for example, in this situation, it would have been the police chief, the police department, the fire department, the planning department, economic development. I mean, a number of departments involved. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And when you have 2 council members heading a committee, that means no other council members can participate. I also was very, very concerned and actually very saddened, I will say very saddened, that the committee did not reflect the community. It did not include teachers. It did not include police officers. It did not include the city manager or the city attorney or the planning department or any one of the students, the parents, PTA. Did not include anyone. I am a firm believer that when you include everybody at the table and there is honest discussion, that something comes out of it. And maybe not everyone is happy with the result, but there is some level of cooperation and agreement. That did not happen. And that is my biggest concern. In a perfect world, this is a federal issue. It's a federal issue. There should have been years of study to collect scientific data. We're talking about medicinal, we're talking about drugs, medical. And unfortunately, there's this huge disconnect. So we have the states taking on some of the burden. I say some because we still do not have the state conducting scientific studies. There is still that absence. So all we have is anecdotal. Somebody that says that this helped me. Somebody says that this doesn't help me. We have no standards at all. For a pharmacist who would have to go to school and maintain a license and could be reviewed by a state licensing, we don't have any of that. You go into one store or another and the product is not the same. There are no standards. And on top of all of this, we're just a municipality. We're not the state. We're not the feds. Supposedly there's going to be some level of enforcement at the state level, and I just don't believe that's going to happen. I do care about all the patients. I have had a lot of family members and friends die of cancer. In my experience, they did not turn to marijuana, and they died. They died. It did not prolong, and it was not something that could prolong their lives. We do not have the data, and I know I asked the police chief and the fire chief about their thoughts about this, and I know they tried to find data. This ad hoc committee's recommendations were approved just in December, and this is a rushed job. This is very, very rushed. And what we have before us now, finally, are recommendations by professionals, by our city staff, by our city attorney, our city manager, our assistant city manager, our police chief and our fire chief, and they are saying, unitedly saying, that we need to slow down because we do not have all the information. We, as a city of Oceanside, turned the corner on crime just a few years ago. We have worked so hard in the last 18 years to change the image of Oceanside. We have worked so hard with youth programs to turn our kids around, to be more successful, because there is an epidemic. It's drug, alcohol, tobacco, and yes, it does include marijuana within our youth. We have a very delicate balance here in Oceanside. We don't have the resources that other cities do. We certainly don't have the resources of a San Diego. We don't have the resources of a Chula Vista. We do not. Any possible increase in crime, and there will be delays in response times for police and for fire. I think I think for me, the biggest issue is there are no standards. You know, the idea that when you are sick, that is a time that you walk into one of these stores, legal or not. And it's probably very closely the same experience. You do not know. There is not a professional at the store. I think somebody mentioned, I guess it was like a joke, that instead of, you could just go to Amazon, right? Instead of go to a store and boppity bop something or other, I mean, the reference was to the fact that there are not professionals in these stores. So I'm very concerned, not only concerned that the motion goes far beyond what even the ad hoc committee came up with, but we are again ignoring what our city staff is recommending. So the black market's not going away. It's not going away. Yes, in my youth, yes, I knew that some people in high school were getting it. There's never been an access issue. What is before us is a commercialization. We have already allowed delivery. I am very concerned about what the ad hoc came up with for our city of Oceanside. So I cannot support the motion in the first place. I do feel that if this is a direction that we're going to go, that we ought to take our time and study what other cities do. We can't afford to jump to the front. We don't have the money, we don't have the resources, and we don't have a tax in place. So for me, I would rather support the recommendations of our police and firefighters. For me, we need to take the time to study. We need to study the impacts to our neighborhoods, to our youth, to our legitimate businesses, to jobs, and how our industrial uses will actually, which is where we need to have jobs, real jobs, medical profession, not cannabis. Not cannabis. I am concerned about our tourism that is family-based, that anecdotally, that ends up going away. We've worked so hard to change our economic development around, so hard, and we're not prepared for this as a city. So I cannot support the motion. Thank you.
Councilmember Feller.
It's my turn? Okay. So we had some stuff that was handed to us over the last few months. I had a couple of questions. First of all, one quick statement. The marijuana that they're talking about, whether it's edible or recreational, or medical or recreational, not edible, but that is probably many, many times greater than it was in the 60s. I just can't imagine that they haven't developed it way beyond that period. How much medical marijuana needs to be grown to supply one dispensary, and what happens to the excess? So does staff have any answer to that?
Can the room answer that?
Well, I would.
Councilmember Feller, that is not an issue that I research, and I do not have an answer for you.
Okay. I would ask if somebody knowledgeable could tell me that answer.
You got.
I'll take Michelle since she's.
Hello. It depends on how many patients you have. When we look at the medicinal market, they are allowed up to 8 ounces on a daily basis. So when you look at most of the patients that are going to be coming in, obviously they're not going to be getting 8 ounces unless they're making their own tinctures or topicals or things like that. Most of them are going to be getting probably about 3.5 grams up to about 7 grams. When you talk about on a monthly basis, you're probably talking about a few. It's probably up to 100 pounds that a dispensary would go through of medical cannabis to meet the needs of their patients.
So if there's 40,000 people going into a dispensary, which I heard earlier,
Well, you have 40,000 times 3.5, which is about the average that most people will get. You're looking at about 125,000 grams, which turns out to be quite a bit of pounds, because there's 450 some in each pound. Yes.
I'm being a little facetious. We have 176,000, but there are at least probably 85 or 90,000 of them have nothing to do with this.
No.
So.
And what I have found, and I'm sure everybody here can support me, is when we actually look at the medicinal market and the market that is coming up, very little of it actually is in the flower-based. Most of it would be going to the manufacturers and the distributors so they can make it into something that is a little bit more appealing to the new medicinal, like the tinctures and things like that.
All right. Thank you. I'm sometimes I wonder why I ask those questions like that. Get a lot of answer. I do agree with Doug Applegate on one thing, and that is Congress must first pass the laws. So if that was something that I could vote, I mean, I might support that. It's a cash business. Many jobs require you to take drug testing, so there are many jobs you can't have as an individual all throughout the spectrum, whether it's government, police, military. You can't, even medical marijuana. And I think that what I've heard tonight I feel like the cause that I was trying to get at when I voted in December to extend this has not reached the answer, the medical marijuana, and the compassion. Greg?
Sorry.
The medical marijuana is, I have a compassion for the people that actually need the medical side, the medical use. And I don't know how to get there. Obviously, we heard plenty about why are we just limiting this to medical marijuana. So that notion for me has slipped away. I believe there is a use and there is probably opportunity. The one thing I would say is I read in our backup that everything's going to be some sort of administrative CUP or a conditional use permit. I think probably we need full public hearings for everything we're doing so that we can vet all of this information as we go forward. I don't think probably 90% of the people that voted, 90% of the 57% would want a dispensary near them in their neighborhood. So I'll get down to and try to be as brief as I can. I don't think this is in any way benefiting our children. The children of this community, anybody's children, are going to be affected, and this is practically anybody can get a medical marijuana card. So that and we heard how the youth get a card and then sell it to the younger people. I believe that happens. So I can't do this in any good conscience, support this there is not a good reason to allow this to happen. I didn't vote for the delivery, but it's on the books, and that is essentially what I would still support. We already allow the delivery, and I think both our chiefs said it plainly enough that we think we don't have a lot in place right now to govern and to police and enforce and treat what could be coming. So with all of that being said, I'm doing this, as far as I'm concerned, for our children in all of these schools, all of the opportunity that they have without the use of medical marijuana, or God forbid, the recreational. So I thank you.
Earlier this evening, I heard, and I believe in taking a sensible and measured approach to how we deal with the entire cannabis issue. And I'm willing to advance some form of compromise, but I will not be supporting the motion as it's been currently made. If the maker of the motion wants to move forward, we can certainly vote. If not, I'm willing to present an alternative motion, a substitute motion.
Please present a substitute motion.
I'm supportive of staff's recommendations regarding the cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, nurseries, and testing. I believe we're looking at a minimum 12 to 18 months, if not longer, for any of those businesses to be actually operational. I am not supportive of any dispensaries at this point in time until the police department has opportunity to review dispensaries and other agencies and make a recommendation regarding those dispensaries. I am supportive of the language that's in these documents regarding allowing delivery services from any licensed dispensary into Oceanside. And I would make a motion that we accept staff's recommendations regarding cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, nurseries, and testings to allow the delivery services, and that we also not accept applications for any of those until the various regulatory fees are approved. Councilmember Kern.
The question about the setbacks in the agricultural zone. Could you live with the ad hoc committee's recommendation of the 20% coverage and no 1,000-foot setbacks?
Does staff have a recommendation regarding the setback issue?
Mayor Weiss and members of the City Council. With respect to the setback issues, I did want to make one point clear, and that was the recommendation of the ad hoc committee was to treat cultivation facilities as a regulated use. By definition, in our code, a regulated use requires a 1,000-foot separation distance from other regulated uses. So, that said, staff's primary concern was just to be sensitive to the fact that This community will be the only one in the county that allows cultivation, and in being sensitive to the other agricultural uses out there, and also in respect to the agritourism efforts that are underway, we wanted to proceed in a measured approach as well. To your question, I don't think staff really has a strong objection to waiving the 1,000-foot distance requirement or going up to 20%. I will say in that zone, however, there is a 25% cap in total, so you would still be working within the overall coverage limit of the agricultural zone.
But the 1,000 feet is measured from another regulated use, not the property line.
It's actually measured, in this case, it would be measured building to building.
Building to building.
And then the one per parcel. The idea of allowing more than.
Well, I'm willing to go with staff's recommendations. And again, we have the ability, if things aren't working, to change them. But I'm willing to advance something at this point. I'm fine with the 20% number, but I'd rather keep the 1,000 feet separation of regulated uses since they are considered regulated uses, at least for now.
All right. No other lights then?
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to figure this out because we're doing a little bit things here on the fly. We spent a year doing all this. This was not fly by night, as some people say, and we came up with these numbers based on our 8 public hearings and our testimony from people. So. I'd like to hear from my colleagues before I go forward.
Deputy Mayor Lowry.
Thank you. Is the proposal 0 dispensaries?
Yes, for the time being, until the police department has had adequate time to evaluate other dispensaries and come back with a recommendation. But we would allow deliveries from any licensed dispensary.
So there's no change in the existing delivery regs then? We're just saying we're going to allow what we've already got in place?
Correct.
Okay. So, Chief, I've got a question. What does that mean for the police to come back with some data or experience or report, or what does that mean?
As Honorable Mayor, Council members, Deputy Mayor Lowry, as I indicated in my memo, what I would prefer is for us to be able to monitor other cities that allow dispensaries, for us to be able to see what kind of issues that they face and challenges that they have with the dispensaries, so that I can come back with some recommendations that will not only meet the needs of those wanting medical marijuana, but also for the safety of our community.
Are we talking about recreational dispensaries, Mayor?
As per staff's recommendation for medical.
Oh, so we're just talking about medical then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're not talking about adult use, recreational?
We would be looking at apples to apples.
Okay. So can you use operations that are in San Diego that have been in business for years?
Well, we would look at all data. I would like to look at time to look at data now that the dispensaries are being approved currently, so that we have more of an opportunity to see what the challenges are from those different jurisdictions.
I know there have been medical dispensaries in place in San Diego that are still in business apparently, but they may have converted to recreational medical. I don't know what their status is because there's been so much transition in the last 3 months. So I don't know that we can actually find an apples to apples comparison. That's what my concern is around saying no to any dispensaries at this point. But if that's what we have to do something, then I'd like to move on to some of the other points that are here.
Could I interject something? No.
No. No.
Good. Mr. Mayor, can I?
Councilmember Kern?
So how much time are we talking about?
Well, my recommendation was to wait a 12-month period of time.
It's going to take you 12 months to study other dispensaries?
Honorable Mayor, council members, you guys are the policymakers. I will make whatever work on what you would like. But if you would like a thorough analysis, the more time we have to do that, the better recommendations that we're going to be able to make for you.
Especially since there's a track record with medical and stuff, I think 90 days would probably be an adequate amount of time to study those. Analysis for a year seems a little excessive to me. So I'll wait to hear from my colleague, but I think maybe 120 days, I guess, if that gives you enough opportunity to do that. That's what I'd like to see, but I'll listen to my colleagues about where they want to do with that.
Deputy Mayor Lowry?
I'd like to withdraw the motion.
Your motion?
Yes.
But did we have a substitute? And I missed
to work on another one.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw the second to your motion.
Yeah.
And I guess I will second the mayor's motion.
So we can hammer something out.
Yeah. So I will second the mayor's motion, the substitute motion.
Mr. City Attorney.
Okay, so prior to voting on this substitute motion, there's some changes that would need to be made to the Exhibit A and Exhibit B that's attached to the ordinance. So basically, we would have to remove the term medical cannabis dispensary in both Exhibit A and Exhibit B. So that would be in, I think, section NN in Article 4. That's on page 4-15. It's in Article 11 on pages 11-5 and Condition L34 on page 11-11. We would have to strike L24. That's a condition in Article 13, page 13-10. We'd have to strike the term medical cannabis dispensary on page 13-4 of Article 13, and the references to medical cannabis dispensary on section 3603, page 36-12. We'd have to add into Article 14 an allowance of for cultivation. I want to get this right. So it's up to 20% of lot coverage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Even if that exceeds 22,000 square feet, it would be up to 20% of lot coverage.
Or a maximum of 22,000.
Okay, that's a difference though. So 20% of lot coverage could be substantially more than 22,000 square feet. So is it the higher number or the 22,000 square feet? Would that be a cap?
In looking at staff's recommendation, or 22,000 square feet.
Okay, so 20% or 22,000 square feet.
Whichever is
But
less.
22,000 square feet would be the cap.
Yes.
Right, so it would be 22,000 square feet or 20%, whichever is less?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then in Exhibit B, the term medical cannabis dispensary, that's Chapter 7 of the code for this local license requirement. We would have to strike that term where it appears in Section 7.115, 7.117, and 7.126L. And then you would retain the delivery service model that's in the existing Chapter 7 now.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I do support our staff being able to have the time to study this, study all the impacts. I think I heard several times that we ought to have impact studies done. So I do feel that year is something that we definitely need. For example, Chula Vista, theirs will not even take effect until there is a tax measure passed. So we may not even, Chula Vista is closer to Oceanside. It is larger. It certainly did go, per capita, it did even more dispensaries than the city of San Diego, which I couldn't believe. I think we should, have the time. I don't know, November, they still won't have it until November if it passes the tax. And there aren't that many, I mean, certainly we don't have any on the coast that have passed it. So we really need to look at apples to apples for Oceanside, and that's what I encourage staff to do, is really, really look at a similarly situated city, including our demographics and our socioeconomic demographics. So I am concerned about distribution and manufacturing, but if there are problems, I guess we can change the ordinance. So I'm going to go ahead and support the motion.
Please vote.
Wait, I need to title this. I'm sorry. Sorry to keep interjecting. And in addition to the text that I read in earlier, I assume part of your motion is no applications until there is a regulatory fee in place. And
Correct.
Staff will be directed to return with that regulatory fee.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, this is an introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside, California, amending Articles 4, 11, 13, 14, and 36 of the 1992 zoning ordinance, and amending Chapter 7, Article 13 of the Oceanside City Code to regulate commercial cannabis facilities with the amendments that I read earlier with regard to this motion.
Deputy Mayor Lau.
So I have a question.
You're voting.
I'm asking a question, if that's okay with you, Councilmember Sanchez. Is that okay with you now? Thank you.
It's the discretion of the chair. It's the discretion of the chair.
Thank you. So, what are we actually voting on? What will be the outcome that I can explain to the constituents who can't get the medicine that they believe they need?
That we will be allowing the cultivation, testing, distribution, manufacturing, and nurseries within Oceanside with a delivery service that they will still have access to their medicinal marijuana as they have now.
And what's the timeline, excluding the delivery service access that they have now? That's what I don't understand.
The timeline for
when those other elements go into place. When are the farmers allowed to farm? When are the people allowed to do what they need to do aside from doing delivery?
Want me to answer that? Okay, so you're going to need a second reading of this ordinance, right? So that will be at the next council meeting, April 11th. And then 30 days thereafter, the ordinance would become effective. But the city wouldn't be taking any applications for local licenses, because remember, there's two permits that have to be obtained. The local license through the city manager that our assistant city manager explained earlier, and a conditional use permit. So we would begin taking applications no earlier than when that fee is set by this council. So that would have to be developed by our staff and brought back.
So there's really no timeline. It's
I
just-
think, Deanna, do you want to address that?
So, Mayor and council members, staff will diligently work on developing a regulatory fee structure. We will research what is in place in other jurisdictions, look at the costs. It can only be cost recovery, and return to you in a timely manner, but it's going to take some time to do that. I would estimate 120 to 180 days.
Okay, so that works great for people who are going to remain on the city council for a couple of years, but for the rest of us who aren't going to be here, it doesn't, unless we get reelected, it doesn't matter. So we've done a lot of work that hasn't gone anywhere. That's quite frustrating. So please, let's vote on this. Thank you.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-1, Feller, no.
With that, we will be adjourning to a regular meeting at 3:30 on Wednesday, April 11th. And I would like, if you could please stand for a moment of silence for Herman Walker.